Hi, everyone. I hope this message finds you each so very well. I'm speaking to you from my studio in West Orange, New Jersey, and I could not be more delighted to have the pleasure of interviewing Alexandra Vassilaros, a distinguished playwright and compassionate workshop leader who has turned personal loss into a powerful force for healing. Alexandra's remarkable career in theater has been defined by deep creativity and critical acclaim, including a co-finalist nomination for the Pulitzer Prize in Drama for her compelling dramatic comedy, Omnium Gatherum. And in 2016, just a year after the devastating loss of her beloved husband of 23 years, she shifted her focus from playwriting to something deeply personal. Drawing from her own journey through grief, she founded the Make Meaning Workshop. In her raw moments of loss, when words felt scattered and elusive, Alex began collecting the fragments, shaping them into something real and restorative. From this deeply personal exploration, the Make Meaning Workshop was born, a space for others to find their own path to healing through words. Since then, Alex has led workshops for esteemed organizations, including the Bowery Mission, the New York Zen Center, the Brooklyn VA, and the Harlem Wellness Center. And through her work, she has guided hundreds of women and men facing the inevitable challenges of loss, crisis, and grief, helping them to find meaning, stability, and hope. I'm looking forward to talking with Alex, who will be speaking to us from Manhattan about the ongoing connection she shares with her late husband, how loss can serve as a gateway to rebirth, and the transformative path that led her to establish the Make Meaning Workshop. We'll explore the heart of meaning making, which is the foundation of her work, her bi-weekly Care for Caregivers group, and more for a conversation that will surely be insightful, inspiring, and highly transformative.
Hi there, and welcome to the Grief and Rebirth podcast. I'm your host, author and trauma survivor Irene Weinberg, here to encourage you wherever you are in your healing journey. In each episode, I chat with incredible grief and trauma specialists, healers, mediums, and celebs, as well as remarkable people who have inspiring healing stories to share. If you're looking for a podcast that's both uplifting and inspiring, you've found it. Let us help you find your joy in life.
Hi, Alex. What a pleasure. A warm, heartfelt welcome to Grief and Rebirth podcast.
Thank you. I'm so inspired to be here. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. We're so in sync, and I know this is going to be a wonderful, wonderful interview for everyone, and they're going to get a lot out of it. You're very special to me. I really think so. So let's share the beginnings of your journey. Could you give us a glimpse into your marriage, the love you shared with John, the journey through his illness, which must have been so hard, and the profound, I know you have a caregivers group, and I can imagine, and the profound impact of his passing, which led you to embrace the path you're now on?
Well, I can only say that, it's a wonderful invitation to speak about the love I shared with my husband, because I feel very blessed in this lifetime to have had a soulmate in my husband, a sweet, generous-hearted man whose favorite word was yes, and who taught me how to say yes less reluctantly, and who also ignited and inspired a lot of adventure in my life, and was my fourth cousin on the Greek side of my family. So it's in my world. I'm half Jewish, half Greek. I was raised within a Greek American family, and in that family was I had a grandmother, a yaya, who was profoundly spiritual, religious too. My mom, my aunt. So I grew up with all these women. And in the background of our life, of course, in most of our lives, there was a cup of coffee. There's always coffee. I have one right here. Oh, I have one. And my husband, when I first met him at a Greek American function for people from the island of Ikaria, who had settled in the United States. So it was a forum, a group that gathered in the thousands to celebrate their heritage. And this was at the Marriott Marquis. And I was introduced. My grandmother really wanted me to go because she was hoping that I would meet a husband. But from my point of view, it was absurd. Like, I'm not going to meet a husband at a Greek American function in Manhattan. I'm just not. And so I was an actress at the time, just beginning to make a transition into playwriting. And someone introduced me to my husband, and his name was John Vassilaros. And in the world of coffee, in the Greek community, Vassilaros is a little bit like Maxwell House. It's a very common name because it's a cup of coffee that all Greeks typically know of, at least Greeks in the United States. And his grandfather kind of was one of the first people to provide diners with not only loans, but with coffee. All right, so I meet him and I look at him and he says, "Hi, I'm John Vassilaros." And he's extremely handsome and dashing. And I thought, I could be in a lot of trouble. I have to be careful, get myself a little bit intact, take a deep breath. He told me that he had been a Green Beret. That was already, I was like, oh my God. And incredibly, he was suave to a point of danger, right? He just had that kind of beauty and confidence. So he's told me his name, John Vassilaros, and I said, oh, I know that name. And I said, like the coffee. And he said, yeah, I make coffee. And I said, well, I make coffee too. And he said, no, I actually make the coffee.
Wow.
And the first thing I flashed on was when I was a little girl in my grandmother's apartment in Astoria, Queens, and I went to the bathroom. In a can of coffee was a plunger. And of course, it was Vassilaros coffee. So I said to my husband right away, oh my God, I'm having such a flash. But I didn't want to tell him what it was because I thought it might be rude. But of course, everybody in my family, my Greek side of my family, was very happy. We all went to our ancestral home in Ikaria to visit, and we really fell in love there.
Oh, that's beautiful. That's beautiful.
Ikaria is one of the blue zones. So it's one of the places on the planet where people live to be, 90s, 100.
Right. So it must be from their habits, from and from all that great coffee.
Yeah. So thanks for that. We make a lot of great coffee. And also, we share, my husband and I, without knowing it, and even we didn't know this until after we were married, we have the same great-great-great-grandfather.
Oh, wow. How fascinating. How long were you married to him before he got ill?
So we were married for 20 years before he got ill, and then he was ill for 3 years.
And tell us about that journey, if you don't mind, please, and the impact of his passing.
Yeah.
And how it affected the path you're now on.
So, of course, he was an older father, and he really embraced fatherhood. We had 3 children, and when he was diagnosed, let's see, one was 12, the other was 15, and the other was 17. And that was a shock, to say the least. He was misdiagnosed, and he had colon cancer, and he died of colon cancer.
Oh, my God.
Metastasized 4th stage. So when they discovered the cancer, it was already all over the place, and he had just had a colonoscopy. And I'll only tell this story for our viewers because it's really important for people to know. What we discovered is the doctor who did the colonoscopy just 2 years before, did not go high enough in the colon, and because they said they would have hit it. It was so big. And it breached the borders of the colon and went everywhere. But had he really gone high enough and slow enough, I think we take for granted that all doctors know exactly what to do. And maybe they want to, but sometimes they go too fast. And if they don't see anything there, they don't settle down and look carefully. That's what I've learned.
I think that's a great tip for people because first of all, that's such an unpleasant experience to go for a colonoscopy anyway. So you just want to get put out and get it over with. And you don't really think about the quality of the person who's taking a view, who's doing his thing up there. That's very good advice.
It's to tap the doctor. I do this too. In addition to saying a little prayer before I have my colonoscopy, I also remind the doctor of my own experience, and I say, please go slow and go all the way high up to the top of the colon.
Right. That's really good advice. So he passes, And you want to talk to us about
Like
that?
I say that this was a complete shattering of everything. Our life was so full, so enriched by family and friends. We were the house that everybody's came to. We just celebrated life. I mean, John and I matched each other in our joy for life. As I said, our sense of adventure, our willingness to laugh and make fun of ourselves and each other, something all my sons have inherited. Also, we love to gossip about each other and other people too sometimes, not much school. But we just celebrated. I think it's also a degree of our Greek side. We really love to dance. We love to go to Greece. We love to swim. We love to jump. We love to leap in the water, which I use in my own workshops of leaping into life even after death. So naturally, his diagnosis was a huge,
Devastating
earthquake. I even remember holding onto the chairs of the arms of the chair in the doctor's office where I got the information that it had breached the colon and he was now in a stage 4 diagnosis. I really think I left my body. I don't think I cried so much. I felt something get very stiff, and I'll reference that later about what I could do about that kind of energetic stiffness, like a black brick between.
Right. Well, you feel like you're suffocating.
Yeah.
The emotion is so big, like God.
And so his treatment was very rugged, and we started out being a little bit hopeful, even though they said this is a chronic cancer diagnosis and you're going to be treated for a long time, or it may just interrupt your life. I mean, they were very honest with us, and we were on all kinds of journeys with looking for doctors, and that whole sudden, like for anybody, those moments are just sudden pivots in a person's life, and you have to surrender to the pivot. And it got a lot of information, and then as the 3 years passed, he became sicker and sicker, and it was obvious that soon he was going to,
Well, you also talk about that there were special end-of-life preparations planned for his passing that helped you and others, and it created a very intimate experience with him.
Well, I also love that you use the word intimate, because every part of it is an invitation to intimacy, because you're confronting something you don't want to confront. You want to resist, but it's irresistible. You cannot. And if you do, you almost abstain from the flow of life. You resist it to the point where you're going to guarantee suffering, not only for the person you're caring for or with, but for yourself and your family. So the stiffness of resistance is nothing I want to encourage. And I encouraged in myself a way to find language that could meet the drama of the situation, which was his leaving.
Right.
His apparent, I'm going to say, leaving. And especially for my children, my husband was so embarrassed to be sick. He was such a hero in life. He showed up for everybody tenfold, and especially for us. And he was such a man of integrity that he felt like he had disappointed all.
You know, I can relate to that, because when I had the car accident, Alex, I was there for everybody. I was the same way. It was very hard. I had 4 surgeries. It was very hard for me to accept that I needed help from people.
Yeah.
That was a huge leap for him. A big challenge, I can imagine. So how did you prepare for this experience? And how did you do this? I think a few people may want to take notes who are listening in.
Well, there was one resource
because there's a lot of acceptance you had to go through to even get to that point where you could say, this is happening. We have to prepare for this.
Well, acceptance was something that was fluid, right? I would accept and then I wouldn't accept. And I want to say that acceptance isn't a destination. Once you land there, you're in acceptance. It's as natural and as fluid as the coming and going of the tide. I would accept, I would not accept. There was new news, I wouldn't accept it. There was, so as he was passing, though, I felt we needed a framework to begin to talk about what was going on. And he seemed to be resisting talking about it. We didn't have language for it. So I reached out through a friend that had made a recommendation to contact the Zen Center in New York City, which provides copious amounts of care for any end of life question or consideration, including preparing people for their own death, their families, having tutoring or mentoring about how to approach end-of-life care, how compassion is such an element that you can offer those that you love and offer yourself. So I called the Zen Center and I was put in touch with Sensei Chodo, Robert Campbell, and he came for a visit. And he said, has your husband talked about dying yet? And I said, no, we haven't talked about it. I mean, he and I have, but we don't have language for the children, the teenagers, 3 boys who all looked up to him, almost couldn't enter the room because he was so frail and so, wasting so elementally that even it was frightening for them to come into the room to be with him sometimes.
How traumatic.
And he was so embarrassed that he didn't always know how to invite them in the room, which was kind of a little small ache in my heart because I knew they needed to speak and I didn't know how many days we had left. So Sensei Campbell came to speak with John, spoke to me briefly, went to speak to John, and within 15 minutes had us all in the bed with John talking about his imminent death. He had language. He apparently said to John, oh, what do you know about what's happening right now? And John said, I know it's not good. Chodo said, you know you're dying. And John said, yes. And then he said, can we discuss it with your family? Because they also know this, but nobody's talked about it. So it's just this big scary thing that everyone's afraid of. So we all spoke. We talked about some things that John wanted and hoped for. We talked about, the facts of, do you want to be cremated? Do you want to be buried? I mean, none of this was something he wanted to discuss at all. He also invited the boys into the room to speak with him. So
That's beautiful.
Help him tell them things and talk with them and cry with them. And a couple of my kids, that was very hard, especially for the littlest. And to see my husband that vulnerable was also a new thing. So that was kind of, my sons almost felt like I'm betraying him even to see him this vulnerable. And so we had to move through all those things. And I'll tell you a little bit about the actual death experience which was very healing for all of us. So then, we talked about what we needed to discuss. It was incredibly, to say that it was bittersweet is an understatement. It was shatteringly beautiful and hard at the same time. And at that time in my awareness, I realized we could hold opposites. We could have horrible and beautiful right side by side. We could have love and impossible loss side by side. And that was a gift of consideration that I gave myself and I talked about with the boys. But it was Chodo who helped prepare us for the end.
What a beautiful thing. And the fact that he was there, he was almost like as a buffer for the different emotions swirling around and kind of structuring the conversation.
He changed the energy in the room a lot. He has a breadth of generosity of spirit and experience that made him a guide for us. A whole guide, really.
So you want to talk to us about the death experience? Because I know shortly after that, you were sitting with a grief therapist.
Yeah.
And she asked you, what stage of grief do you think you're in? So
one of the great experiences I had about around his death that put me a little bit at ease was, there was a vigil and there were about 25 people who were there with him. And we were outside, there was a bonfire. My sons had a lot of their friends there. So there was a real community there, kind of anything I've ever wanted. People were eating, people were talking, and he was going into stages of dying. I mean, he had asked for morphine. He was in a lot of pain. And he asked actually when I was out, he asked the people around him if they could give him morphine because he said, I can't do this when Alex is there. So he was right. And when I got home from shopping that day, they said they gave him morphine and as per his request and not a lot, but enough to get him
to help him
sleeping. And sleeping deeply. And then he was passing. I have to say that when my friends called me to say he asked for this and we delivered, I got so angry at them. And then the nurse who was there was a nurse for one day who came, she held my hand. She said, "What is it you wish for?" And I said, "I wish for him to have peace, but I just didn't want it to be this fast." And she said, "But let's stay with your first wish. You wanted him to have peace. And now he's getting peaceful." And I was like, okay, all right. I had to let my ego just go.
What lessons there were for you in all this?
Oh, so much.
This whole lesson, everything is about, and I found it in my experience too, it's about letting go. It's so challenging because we all hold on so tightly to control whatever we can.
And if we can let go, then we start to begin to practice the muscle of letting go. And that was one of the first times, and she spoke to me so sweetly, this nurse, and she understood. I knew her name was Doreen. She held my hand. She helped create context for me and a willingness to surrender, to what was happening. Because as I said, surrender isn't a place you go and you always surrender. It's always an invitation to think about surrendering. And then I did. I mean, I had no choice in the matter, but I had a choice to suffer or not. And
but you also were lucky, I would say fortunate in the situation, because there were special people who left you support and had wisdom for you to help you. Not everyone gets that. And I think that's wonderful. I mean,
that's
you took care of yourself. You went to the Zen Center.
Yeah, we went to the Zen Center, creative language. And actually, and this is the beautiful part. So after he died, they called, he passed. He was with a group of his favorite male friends were with him. And we were outside. We didn't know when it was coming. And suddenly they brought me in and he passed. And here's what we did, which was so beautiful. My kids spontaneously just started hugging him and kissing him. And they kissed him in ways that I had never seen them do in life. They kissed his mouth. They kissed his eye. This is a 15-year-old, a 17-year-old, and a 19-year-old. They held him. Then they switched positions. So the one who was at his feet went to his head and did the same thing, holding his face, his bony, beautiful face, but that had become almost nearly not recognizable. But with the courage that love brings, they were just addressing their love. They thanked him. I mean, they copiously thanked him. Just thank you, thank you, thank you. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Just repeating those phrases.
What a beautiful thing.
I love you. I mean, I actually thought as a mother right then and there, they're good. They know how to love. They're going to be okay.
Okay. But the other thing that they didn't know was that he was hearing as a soul. He knew everything that was going on. He was present to it. What a beautiful thing as he's transitioning, that he's aware of because people think it's over. It's not. He's just left his body.
Yeah. I mean, we bathed him. I don't think I've never approached death as the end. I've never thought of it that way. How could it be when the life we've lived is so alive and it's just the body that's making a transition? So, I mean, the soul's making a transition. The body's getting ready to just...
The body's, right,
the body's let go.
Yeah, we lose our earth suits. We just leave our earth suits. So now you're in therapy. You're breathing your heart out.
A bunch of months later, of course, I'm almost
devastated,
disembodied, having trouble sleeping, crying a lot. But I also have to say, having a lot of friends around. We would cook together. This being togetherness is so important. We'd cook together. We eat together. We'd talk about memories together. And then I did go to see a counselor, and the counselor asked me very plaintively, "What stage of grief are you in?" Dutifully. Good question. I said, stage of grief, as though there was like those 5 stages that have been misappropriated.
Right.
They're Elizabeth Kubler-Ross's.
Right.
And they were supposed to be, as I understand it, related to people who get a terminal diagnosis. So they go through these stages of resistance and then acceptance, anger, blah, blah, blah. So I said stage of grief, and I really thought about it. And I said, I'm in all stages all the time. And I thought she probably wouldn't have asked me that question if she had had a primary loss herself. So I thought this probably isn't the place I belong. And I quickly wondered what it is that I could do to create a space where we could explore the positives, negatives, love, loss, beauty, horror of all these things that I had experienced that I know so many people experience. I mean, I'm certainly not alone in that. And how to community around the truth of this kind of struggle.
So did writing and because the space that you established for yourself, you went into, because I know that you were self-calming, right? It's helped you to stabilize and grow because you started writing, right?
Well, you know what happened? When he died, there were so many little miracles happening. Not only the way I was watching the kids who had probably never in life expressed that much open-hearted, like gushing love.
What a beautiful thing.
Yeah, I mean, I saw that and I thought, take note, take note. There were so many little things. I noticed nests and birds nesting in a nest right outside the window. I mean, I had so many little awarenesses, but I couldn't write full sentences because I was in too much grief. So I created, this is the book I created. Here it is. I made this book because I've kept journals my whole life and I'm a writer, right? And I write full sentences most of the time. And I called it Fragments because I thought I need permission to write things down, but I don't want the pressure of having to make it pretty or nice or perfect. I just want to write what I see or what I'm noticing. And that was a great freedom. And that began as a seminal part of what I thought I might be able to bring to others in some kind of forum.
You were not even quite aware of this yet, but you were planting your seeds.
It was starting to begin to coalesce.
It's starting to happen. You also connected with John through this gifted medium named Melissa Boyd.
Yeah.
And you used some other modalities to communicate with him, and he's visited you in dreams. So tell us about that.
Well, I want to say one thing. When he died, I ran upstairs to my rock collection in our house, and I pulled a rock that became, this is really important. I encourage people to do this because it was a living memento that meant something to me, and I put it in his hand after he died while we were all sort of keening and kissing and loving around him. He had this in his hand. So that I knew it was going to be my memento from me to him and him to me. And I carry it with me even on planes. I almost have not gone anywhere without it. It's only recently that I haven't. It means so many different things because you see it's got a path. Right. This comes from Greece. So whenever I hold it in my hand, I'm very aware that it's possible. His presence is very cold.
You could almost feel like his energy in it.
Well, I feel his energy so much that I never question that somewhere he's there. He's there perhaps in a different form, but his energy is with me. And sometimes only my grief can get in my way. So I did reach out to a medium named Melissa Boyd, who I highly, highly recommend. And that was certainly some contact that was meaningful to me because there were so many aspects of what she brought to the fore that, I just cried my way through the whole session. And she really heard him, seemed to hear him. He thanked me for a lot of things. And without being too specific, I'll just say it was an important part of my discovery recovery.
I can totally relate. Mm-hmm. So special and so important. And he's visited you in dreams too. You've had some very vivid dreams with him, which is how spirit often also communicates with us, right?
Yeah, he asked me in a dream. Oh, it's hard for me too. It's so private. But he seemed to ask me in a dream, don't stare at death. Look at me now. Look at me. I was staring at I was in the dream, I was in a home for the aged, and I was staring. Oh, wow. What appeared to be a friend who was looking like she was moving on out of here, getting ready to leave. And I was staring at her, just like, oh no, my friend is leaving us. And he showed up looking absolutely swell. And he said, look at me. Do I look like what you're staring at? Don't be so distracted, and he was full of life. And I thought, okay, good idea. And he's come in other dreams. He came to me once in a dream, and it seemed that he was saying, okay, move along. There's life in you yet.
Yeah, and he's there. He's seeing. He's watching what's going on. And he made an extraordinary experience. He made an extraordinary appearance on the 6th anniversary of his passing, right? Yeah. You've got a great story that left everyone in awe. So inspire our audience What happened?
It was the 6th anniversary of his death on July 10th. And we kind of said, today's the 6th anniversary. I went to the bathroom to brush my teeth, and he always played backgammon. He was a very good backgammon player. And I was brushing my teeth, and I looked down in the drain, and held in the bottom of the drain was a dice. And the die was set on the number 6.
Oh my gosh.
Deep in the drain. And it was a single dice. And when I went back to the set, the backgammon set, there was one dice in the set, and there was one in the drain where I had. Now, who puts a dice in a drain? You know, nobody goes, it's not like it tumbled into the drain.
Right.
So it felt like we all took pictures of it. We were pretty astounded. Yeah.
That is astounding. Yeah. And what is your current relationship with him like now? Are you talking to him? Do you feel him around you? Do you still communicate with him through mediums and all? What is that about?
I think when I make big decisions, I inherited a business also, and I wanted to really be respectful of that business.
Wait a minute, you inherited a coffee business?
Yeah, I inherited a coffee business that I shared with the rest of his family. But there were many decisions that we all had to make, and I wanted to make them respectfully. And the business also was like a member of the family to me. And for better or for worse, I thought I would want to communicate with him the best I could, you know. And he did come to me and he thanked me, and he said, you did good. I'm proud of you, and thank you for respecting my legacy and the legacy of our name. And so, yes, there are times where I talk to him a lot, and it's nothing. I say it's sacred, nothing sacred, right? I just talk to him. I talk to him
the same way. I talk to Saul too.
Do you use any aids like a pendulum or anything like that?
I use the rock.
I use the rock. I have, I don't use a pendulum. I always light a candle. The rock became the way in for me. And also I just feel like we're so connected. I don't really
just know he's around you.
Yeah.
You don't have to work hard at it. He's there. So now let's go to, you started this Make Meaning workshop. So this loss, talk about grief and rebirth. This loss became a gateway for you to rebirthing yourself. And this was a really transformative journey for you. So how did you come up with the concept of a Make Meaning workshop to help people? Now you've got your fragments of information that you've been putting together for yourself. What was this process like for you, Alex?
So when John was sick, I asked if I could volunteer at the Bowery Mission. And I had an idea that I would write with them. And we wrote together. And what I discovered, and I only did it because I thought, I'm so deep in the experience of my own suffering. Let me just get out of it a little bit and learn about what other people are going through. And many of these women are in not just one crisis, but 3 or 4 compiled on top of each other, just sitting on top of each other. And they were so eager to write. And they were writing and I was writing. We didn't talk much. We only wrote. Because when you're writing and not talking, you are not leaning on your presentational self. You're exploring a deeper self that has language just waiting for you. But if you don't go there often, you don't reveal it to yourself. And inevitably, when people die, you're wondering about where are they? Why did this happen? What is life? What is death? You're asking beautiful, important questions. But if you just sit with somebody who says, how are you feeling today? You can get very mundane. And there's all this beautiful mystery waiting for us. And what I discovered working with the women was that mystery is something they touched upon very, very freely, intuitively on paper, not when they were talking, but when they were writing. And we wrote on prompts, and the prompts are special invitations to our deeper self, the one that wants to talk to us. It wants us to listen to us. We're human beings, but I believe we all have the capacity to mediate, to live with the interruption that death may bring us. And instead of just leaving it over there, way over there, I don't want to touch it.
Which is what you were doing, by the way, before you went to the Zen Center to get the help. You all were not addressing it.
Well, my husband too, we were kind of taking a lead from him. I think the moment where Toto gave us language was the beginning of language for what we're going through. Deep, resourceful opportunities for resilience and innate knowing. Like we have an innate knowing. And how do we invite our knowing to get larger and larger and larger? And for me, that's where resilience is. That's where mystery has value. It isn't there to confound us. It's there to invite us in. And I think once we open the gate, it's just more and more opportunity for us.
That's so fascinating. And you have worked with so many people. You have any really good stories? Or are you overwhelmed? Or it feels like you're inspired by them, but it must be overwhelming sometimes also, because you hear stories, the layers and layers and layers and layers of what they've dealt with and how they're dealing with their grief.
Well, I love that you asked that. And a little smile comes to my face, because what I discovered pretty quickly, people said, isn't it just too much to hear everybody's grief story? And I was so moved by people's vulnerability, by everyone to a fault, having to deal with life and death, feeling fragmented, feeling interrupted, but also carrying on, like then doing the next thing. Everybody was, I'm in hell, I'm in grief, I'm in frustration and sorrow, but I also made a perfect cup of coffee. I made a meal for my kids. I went to school. I picked up the phone. I pet my dog. There are functional things that we're doing constantly, but if people don't notice that we're doing them, we forget to notice ourselves. We don't actually notice how functional we are. We don't always notice that we actually have great capacity, I believe, to hold these contradictions and to live through them. And so, everybody in everyone in every session kind of brought my heart alive, really brought me alive.
I feel that way about interviewing you today. I mean, this is what it's all about. And it feels to me like as you encourage people and as you help them to get into their emotion, their pain, what they're feeling, what they're going through, they are more authentic when they're writing it than when they're speaking it, and having to make a certain impression or whatever. Am I right about that? I mean, that's
exactly right. And I say to people, look, our presentational self normally wants to be liked, appreciated, understood. So we have a practice self that we meet others with. Do you get me? Do you understand? What's kind of an opportunity with grief is that we're so vulnerable that we can stop faking it. I mean, I found that I couldn't fake it. And people would say, how are you? And I say, I'm a mess. I'm disoriented. I don't know who I am. I've lost my identity. I need to touch someone. I was so honest that I almost,
Did you put people off? Did you scare people? Did some people want to detach from you and run from the emotion?
Well, of course, and this is one of the prompts that I use in my workshops is things people say or things I say to people, because people have so many experiences with what people say to them kind of routinely, and it kind of is so like hackneyed, but it doesn't exchange meaning when you want it the most. So I would say sometimes, can you sit closer to me? I need to feel your skin against mine. And they would look shocked. To tell you the truth, because I'm a dramatist and because I love to surprise an audience, I loved being surprised by my own self. And I even was entertained, not that I was doing it on purpose, by people's response to my honesty. And I thought, I want to live like this a little bit more. I want to live in honesty. I want to say things like, I just felt John move through the space. I know
Feels
John
like a woman who wants to rebirth herself and become more authentic and give up some of the drama that she's been presenting to the world.
Yes. I mean, and everybody would say, oh, but you're feeling this. And I said, also, I'm feeling incredible awe for the love I've lived. Oh, but don't you also feel terrible? I said, I feel sad, but I also feel very blessed. And all this honesty that I found within myself began to be something I noticed that people did when they wrote themselves down. See, in our groups, we don't talk. So I'm talking a lot now, but we don't talk.
Oh, no, but this is so important for people to know, because people listening to this who have a problem expressing feelings and getting in touch with themselves, to know that they can come to one of your workshops and get into their deep feelings and their process is very healing.
Well, and they don't even know I didn't know that how much people knew about mystery. And they didn't seem to either until they read their own writing. And then magically, they revealed parts of themselves like fragments of a prism or aspects of a diamond. There was so much to explore. There was so much depth there that sometimes you could feel that, how do we bring more of that depth right into life? Why should we leave it there while we experience this more mundane aspects when there's so much, mystery that death kind of, baptized us with, and love and love and love and love. I really took opportunities to speak in the name of love.
And you're so articulate.
Well,
I
people in the workshop also, I have to say, I don't think one time I've ever not thought people are writing. They're not trying to be poetic, because I give them a prompt. They they get to choose from the prompt. And then they write for 10 minutes and then they read. There's no interruption, there's no crosstalk, and there's no criticism. So they're already unburdened by having to write well or write.
Now, do they read it to themselves or do they read it to the group?
So they're invited and they're encouraged to read it to the group so they can experience that kind of vulnerability and honesty without worrying that somebody's going to respond. So we just, kind of a holy, energetic circle, and we just hold the energy for each other, but we don't interrupt them. And the other thing that we practice, which I think is super important, it's given me a lot of opportunities to practice this with my family, with my sons, is deep listening. Because you're not asked to speak, you don't have to say to that person. As a matter of fact, when we used to meet in person, I would ask people, don't when somebody is reading, don't clap, don't respond with little things, resist the impulse to interrupt them in any way, because it pulls them right back into their presentational self. And then the next person may wonder, why didn't they clap for me? Or why didn't they do that? So the ego gets a little worried, and we want to leave the ego there while we explore, this poetic, honest.
It's an unfolding.
Yeah,
it's
exactly. And it's to sit with, also to be with listening, not with what am I going to say? I have to say the right thing right now. So you don't have that concern. You can just feel the energy of them.
You know what I love about it, Alex? It feels like you take away all judgment.
We do.
They write down what they need to write down. They say it or they don't say it, but no one is judging. And it probably really comforts other people who are hearing the stories. Because I thought I had the worst story in the world, and oh my God, look what this person's going through.
Exactly what you're saying. It's like a compassionating machine. You just start feeling compassion and a sense of, oh, they went through that too. I'm not alone here. This is this is the human experience. Oh, I forgot. This basically happens to us all. And then in the workshop, sometimes there's a young person who's lost a parent, and an older person, maybe an 80-year-old, 85-year-old, who's lost a partner or even a child. And suddenly they have such an exchange, of information to give.
It's wonderful.
And it really gives us an arc of information through this honest communication. That's not force, right? And the prompts are a little left of center. So I'm not saying, how did you feel when the inevitable happened, right? I'm saying prompts like things people say, things you wish people would tell you, things I forgot to remember. Out my bedroom window, I can hear. In the, things like that, so that they're what my soul wants me to know. So, and beautiful. Often they write their own anthem to what's important to them. And
I'll bet relationships are formed in the groups also. I'll bet friendships are formed there.
Sometimes there are. I mean, people are allowed to reach out to each other if they give permission to. And I'm always, actually, I leave there feeling, I have to say, it surprises even me, I feel invited into life.
It's an uplifting. I totally get it. So I want to ask you, I am so impressed that you did this Care for Caregivers group. Talk about a needed thing in this world, which you've got to understand better than anyone because of what you went through with John. But let's talk about your 3 boys first. How's after that, how has each one of them processed what happened? How's he doing with that? And the meaning making, what has that meant to him? And then let's get into your biweekly Care for Caregivers group, because I really want people to know about that. And I know and you also have virtual private writing sessions too.
Thank you for yes, I love working privately with people, and we write together. They write and I write. And then they can bring what we've written, and I encourage people to do this in the groups or privately, to their therapists or their counselors or their coaches.
Beautiful.
Often they'll write something that is so worth sharing with people they love, because instead of waiting and not sharing this beautiful aspect, dimension, a perspective that they may not have even known existed, not keeping it in a journal for nobody to see, but perhaps sending it to somebody else who gets to know more about this person than they ever imagined they would know. So it's a gift. I mean, I think it's a gift to me for always and always. But I would say that for my sons, and I say this to all mothers who are concerned that sons suddenly, are bravely trying to manage the world. And I think one of them, struggled in the world and sort of was fractured, and drugs became a way for him to escape. And of course, that was a great, great emergency for our family. Now, on the other side of it, because he's many years clean and sober, and also eager to help other people, we have a new language for our pain, for our frustration, for our loss, for our love. And he was kind of an initiator of even more consciousness for us. And all the boys rose to the occasion in a really elemental and even heroic way, that they met their own heartache and they made love from it.
That's beautiful. Alex, beautiful. And I have to give you credit too, because it's not easy as a mother raising 3 boys. I have 3 grandsons. So I have a son I totally can identify. And they came out of the experience, instead of being even more devastated, never dealing with it, they came out of the experience as more compassionate and empathetic human beings. And they have a wisdom now that other kids don't have.
That's right. That's right. And I say that to them, and I say that to other young people. I said, it's an invitation to your own death. How cool is that? Mm-hmm. And they'll often talk to other kids. As a matter of fact, when Johnny died, my youngest son was getting emails from, how can I put this? He was getting emails that were addressing, school issues, or would Mr. and Mrs. Vassilaros come to this event, but they were sending them to my husband, and it was appearing, and my son could see that, and he would go to this, he'd say, "Mom, this is killing me." They were also inviting him to, do book reports on books that were not appropriate for him in early, fresh grief. So I went to the school and I said, "Do you have a protocol for kids who are going through primary loss?" And they said, "No." I said, "You need to get one, because there's other kids here who are losing parents, and you don't even have a way to address it at school." He's seeing emails addressed to his son 2 years after his father passed. That's not right. And there were other things that happened that would just show the reluctance to deal with it. And I asked them to find.
But they couldn't deal with it either.
No.
Here you are helping all these people in your groups and everything to deal with it, but most people are in such denial. It's too close for them.
Yeah, and they wouldn't even, they couldn't even coaches wouldn't breach the subject with my son. And here he was, sort of arming himself and armoring himself to get through a day, especially the first year. And there was no sort of person, even the therapists at the school, the counselors, didn't have a protocol. So anyway, I did go, and I would say that anybody should encourage their schools to refine or design a protocol for kids dealing with death.
Right, that's so important. So now I want to hear about your biweekly Care for Caregivers group. What brought that on? And then let's talk about your virtual private writing sessions.
Well, so the Zen Center, as I said, I can't recommend it enough. zencenter.com. I think that's what it is. I will look, and I'll provide that in some of the material I give you. The New York Zen Center, we were speaking together, Chodo and I. He's one of the founders of the Zen Center, and he was asking what else we could do They must ask that every day because they do so much for so many. And I think we thought of this together, well, they have many, many different programs for people dealing with loss. But one of the things we noticed is the isolation that caregivers can get in. There's just so much isolation. And we wondered if it wouldn't be helpful to start a caregiver group. And now it's about a year old. We inevitably have between 20 and 30 people in every single group. There's a sliding scale to join. Everything goes to the Zen Center and then back to people who need it. And it's a remarkable group of people, all ages. Parents taking care of children who need special care over a lifetime, spouses between 40 and 80 taking care of their partners, many people dealing with dementia, with Parkinson's, with advanced illness. And there is such an exhaustion and almost, agonizing loneliness in caretaking, especially as you watch your beloved leaving in stages. And so now we have a place to go with all of that. We meet bi-weekly, and all that information is on the Zen Centers.
I think that's wonderful. I really, and so needed. And people who are caring for others who are going through all this, they need support. And they often don't, and they don't have the time or they don't know where to go. I think that's so great. And tell us about your virtual private writing sessions. And then I want to ask you about the offers you got for all our eager listeners in the audience. I know you've got some special offers for them today.
Well, and I also just want to thank you for this opportunity. I mean, I just think what you're bringing to people and the opportunity for them to think about death and rebirth in a different way. And I would say that part of my rebirth is being able to offer these workshops and find another path for myself, which,
beautiful.
So you asked about the private sessions. So the
private writing sessions,
yes,
so people can actually work with you about honing their skills or learning to express themselves better. Or
sometimes they might want to even do deeper work than they can do in the group. They might want to do pointed work, or they discover something in the group and they want to really go deep. And I love that opportunity. Sometimes also people feel a little embarrassed or shy about working in a group setting. So the thing is, I always also write in the group, so I'm never the teacher. I'm a participant and also equally vulnerable. And so that is the same thing that happens in our private sessions. And usually we might speak a little bit more about I discover in their work and what they might bring, of course, to other counselors, therapists, so they can dimensionalize or even grow the inklings, not the inklings, but the awarenesses that they are mining in the work they're doing.
Beautiful. So tell us about your special offers.
My special offers. So we have 20% discount on 2 workshops that are coming up. One is called I Love You But Be Elsewhere, which is a little bit more about people struggling in relationships that they may want to get out of, but are reluctant to do it. That is specific.
I think that's fabulous. That would probably solve half the problems on the universe, for people could know how to break up with people and what to do.
And I have to say that my experience letting go of my husband helped me learn about letting go of a lot of things, including relationships that didn't work anymore. Letting myself be more in the flow of life, where everything in nature comes and goes and comes to pass and comes again to pass again and comes again to pass yet again. And nothing's here to stay, even big feelings, even agony. So we do that. I Love You But Be Elsewhere. A lot of people in relationships that have seem to be or want to be over, they come to that workshop, and that's really great. And then we have another one coming up in January. That's not in January. Moving from Lost to Found. It says January here, but it's a little earlier than that. Anyway, that is coming up at the New York Zen Center. So you can find out about those workshops.
That's a great one for someone who is looking to grapple with the holidays. The holidays, we're in July, we're moving into the holidays, and I would think that someone who is really struggling with the holidays, how am I going to handle that, would be a great workshop to go to prepare them for that.
We have special workshops always being announced, but if you mention that you come from your podcast and you use the code Rebirth20, you'll get a 20% discount.
That's great. And everyone, that's also going to be in the show notes. So you'll be able to find that there.
Great.
And what is the wonderful Alex message about the importance of healing? Why should people heal? Why should they go through it, be it through writing or whatever? What does that do for you? Instead of staying with all your...
It opens your heart. It makes all things possible, makes the impossible possible. It makes your concern for others that much greater. And your opportunity to reach out to others who are hurting, that much more satisfying. And beautiful. I have to say, I do find joy in this work. I find people's vulnerability and their humanity really moving and inspiring.
That's beautiful. You just answered my last question. What is your tip for finding joy in life?
One of my big tips for finding joy is ask questions. Ask beautiful questions. Don't be afraid of asking questions. And then discovering yourself on paper and then sharing it with another person. It brings them alive and it brings you alive too.
I would contribute to that some people are a little shy to share.
Yeah.
And they need to learn. And I would imagine your workshops help them to do that, to learn that they're as precious as anyone else and their experience is as important as anyone else's. And people can learn from that.
Oh, I love that you use the word shy. Shy is such a beautiful word. It's just like you're shy. You just want to invite yourself to the party of life, which has a lot of, concentrated challenges in it, but it also has so much connectivity to others. That's why we're here, isn't it?
That's why we're here. That's exactly what this conversation today is all about. Alex, your journey from grief to rebirth has shown that even in life's darkest moments, purpose, presence, and hope can emerge that lights the way forward. Through your Make Meaning workshops, you are helping the grieving to explore how writing, reading, and deep listening can ground their wisdom, grow their perspective, and discover more about themselves, which helps them transform their own hardships into meaningful growth and healing. My deep gratitude to you for the wisdom and compassion you continue to share, which guides others towards healing, strength, and new meaning in their lives. What an extraordinary gift you're bringing to the world. Thank you from my heart, truly. And many blessings.
Oh, thank you so much. And thank you for the mercy that you provide for so many.
Thank you, Alice. As I like to say, to be continued.
Okay, to be continued, always. Don't worry.
Thanks for tuning in to Grief and Rebirth. Remember, you can dive deeper into everything we've discussed by checking out the show notes and all past episodes at ireneweinberg.com. Don't forget to follow us on social media at Irene S. Weinberg on Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, and wherever you love to hang out online. Plus, we're on YouTube, so be sure to subscribe and never miss a video. For those of you listening, you'll find links to my 2 books, Good to the Last Drop and They Serve Bagels in Heaven, in the show notes. And if you're watching on YouTube, you can see those books listed right above, so don't miss out. And here comes a special treat. If you sign up for Audible as a first-time user using my link, which you can find in the show notes, you can get They Serve Bagels in Heaven for free. And finally, people often ask me what I read, what I use, and what I recommend for healing and self-care. So I've carefully curated a compilation of those items to share with you. You can head over to kit.co/grief and rebirth to check them out. Thanks again for tuning in, and until next time, many blessings.